Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bloomberg, for this very inspiring speech and also for your dedication to the fight against climate change. It is now my great honor to welcome President Juncker, the President of the European Commission, my President, and to say thank you very much for being here. It means a lot. It means a lot for the many people in my team that have been working relentlessly for the last 2 years to make this happen. So thank you very much for being here.
Mon président.
Good morning, dear Michael, dear Valdis, Madame la vice-présidente du Parlement européen, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Vice President of the European Parliament, members of Parliament, former members of Parliament, ministers, dear friends. I cannot take the floor today without recalling the victims of the terrible attacks which took place on this day 2 years ago in Brussels, just 200 meters away from here after the appalling attacks at Zaventem Airport. A terrible barbaric act was carried out. I knew some of those who died, and I would like to also pay homage to the town of Brussels, to Belgium, to the Belgian authorities and Belgian citizens who have been able to stand up and say no to this terrible attack. And I would like to invite all of you not to forget those who have survived, those who were injured physically and psychologically. We say that such and such a number of people were killed, but we don't talk about those who survived. And some of these people are still struggling today to get back to normal life. And I shall certainly carry the memory of this day. On the 22nd of March, I was in my office just round the corner. The metro where the attack was carried out is just a couple of hundred meters from here. I heard what one hears at such a time, and I felt injured myself. After Valdis, I would also like to welcome you here. I'm very pleased to see you all and very honoured to welcome so many prestigious guests to this conference, which will set the tone for our future work. And I'm very pleased to co-chair with my friend Vice President Dombrovskis this conference. Well, co-chairing is perhaps going a little too far. When I accepted to give a welcome speech, I wasn't quite aware that I was going to be meeting 8 prime ministers and presidents before the beginning of the European Council. So I shall be off fairly rapidly. So for me, co-chairing today is a simple task. A French philosopher, Blaise Pascal, said, I like the things that go together. And I would like the financial sector to support our planet and these things to go together. The clock is ticking faster and faster, and we need about 4 planets to keep up our current lifestyle, the way in which we produce and consume. But we only have 1 planet. So we need to change the way we live. We need to reorganize ourselves, whether this be in the area of technology or energy, the economy, but also we need to reorganize financing. Now, our resources are finite, but human creativity is not. And that also goes for the financial sector. Slightly over 2 years ago, in 2015, we signed many historic agreements reflecting our ambition of saving our planet, which is the heritage of all humanity. In September September 2015 at the UN General Assembly, we approved a sustainable development program with a target of 2030, and then on the 12th of December 2015, in December, we adopted a binding agreement, a sustainable agreement, which translates a long-term vision of a carbon-neutral economy. Now, I've got a problem here. I don't know what to do with my my papers. And the Commission is highly competent, but they always give me speaking desks, which are rather too small. They're probably nice for a primary school, but for adults, they're not very practical. Anyway, I was saying that these agreements are the basis for a real a turning point, but still disasters are occurring. They have occurred over the last 2 years. If you look at the French West Indies, Greece, the Baltic countries, Portugal, we can see climate disasters which have economic and human consequences, and the consequences are becoming more and more visible, and they affect all of us without exception, including those who still deny what's going on. That doesn't mean, though, that nothing has been done. Quite the opposite. Throughout the world, the ecological transition and an economic and social transition is underway, and all of us can play our part. Right from a simple citizen who decides to go for green packaging rather than plastic packaging and who recycles what they can, right through to small and large companies who are developing new economic models which respect and protect the environment. And we also don't want to forget who are also trying to change the way that they operate. These changes, moving towards a low-carbon economy and a world with lots of opportunities, with energy independence and good life quality, these changes are very important. And we can make these changes while retaining a good quality of life, as we've shown in Europe. Now, we are leading the way in the fight against climate change. In 2007, we decided to cut back by 20% our CO2 emissions by 2020. Compared to the figures of 1990. And in 2016, our emissions had already dropped by 23%, and our GDP had increased since 1990. Now we are aiming for a reduction of 40% in all our economic sectors by 2030. We have an innovative legislative framework in order to achieve this goal. We want to stimulate investments in all sectors in transition and encourage private investors to participate in this movement. But the truth is that all of this will not be enough to achieve our goals, and we absolutely must do more, and we have to do it now. Ladies and gentlemen, we will stick to the promised climate goals. We have to stick to them. We have to meet these goals. You ready? I think multilingualism in the Commission is a very important thing. There is not just one single official language.
That one.
So we will achieve our climate goals. We must achieve them. And that means that we have to have investments. We have to fill the gap of 180 billion a year. We've already started to do this. We are ambitious and we want to achieve this goal, and we have tried to put this into concrete actions and figures. So the EU has increased its spending on climate protection. We had about 10% at the beginning of the current financial framework, and now we're moving towards about a fifth of the EU budget. That was the figure last year. In the future, at least a fifth of the budget for the EU will be spent on climate change matters. We are using public funds to do this, but public authorities can't do this alone. And I think it's a good idea to look for other sources of investment. We have an investment offensive, which we have launched through the Juncker plan. When we adopted the plan, we thought we should identify what would work. And now we've called it the European Fund for Strategic Investments, but actually it's the same sort of thing, really, as this plan. But anyway, we've started this investment offensive, and we have generated about 274 billion worth of investments for the future. That's the amount we've mobilized. Up to the end of last year, 1/5, in fact 21%, have been invested in energy efficiency projects and renewable energy projects and sustainable projects. So we're talking about future-orientated projects. But that shouldn't let us rest on our laurels. At least 40% of our investment funds will go to projects which will contribute to our achievement of the Paris goals. Our commitment goes beyond just the European continent. We have an external investment plan as well, and that's a recipe for success for the investment initiatives in Africa. And there we will be making investments to the tune of 44 billion euros. Climate-friendly projects are a particular point of emphasis. We had a One Planet summit in Paris, and there we promised that investments will be made in sustainable cities, sustainable energy, and sustainable agriculture. By 2020, so that's very soon, in these three areas, we will have generated 9 billion worth of investment. So we're not just exporting environment and social standards, we're also making Europe a driver of investment in the green economy and green technology. This is an investment for the future, for Europe and for the rest of the world.
Part of the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, with the scale and urgency of investment needed, public funding and regulation can only go so far. If we are to plug to the 180 billion euro investment gap, every part of our economy must pull its weight, and this starts with the financial sector. I say this mainly for three reasons. First, with 100 trillion euro in assets, the financial sector has a huge potential for green investments. Second, is an economic imperative for the sector. The myth that growth does not give profit has now been thoroughly disproved. And the costs of not acting are even greater. Between 2007 and 2016, economic losses from extreme weather disaster rose by 86%. In 2017 alone, those losses amounted to 117 billion euro. This is an even more worrying trend when you think that almost half of the exposure of euro area banks is linked in one way or another to climate change risks. And thirdly, I believe it is the financial sector's duty. Europe is now recovering from the worst financial crisis in our recent history. Our economy has grown faster than that of the United States for the last 2 years, and unemployment is now at a 9-year low. But the impact of the crisis was harsh for millions of people around Europe, and the recovery took a long time to start, and it is still not. It is fair to say that the global financial sector was part of the problem, which ultimately affected all in our society. Never again should short-term profits prevail over our long-term future. So as we reform our financial system from top to bottom, I believe the financial sector has a responsibility to help Europe to prepare for the economy of tomorrow, to be part of the solution, not the problem. We must focus on rebuilding the link between the world of finance and the needs of citizens and the real economy. This requires a comprehensive shift in the culture and the structure of our financial system. And this is a major part of the thinking our European capital market all this is in charge of. It helps provide businesses with a greater choice of funding at lower cost. It offers new opportunities for savers and investors and makes our financial system more resilient. A key pillar of completing the Capital Markets Union is the Action Plan for Financing Sustainable Growth, which we presented earlier this month. The idea behind this action plan is to help us make a systemic change in investment culture. Sustainability should not be seen, as Valdis said, as a niche within the financial system. It must define our financial system. And it is an opportunity we must grasp before others do. In the financial world, first mover advantage is essential. The good news is that Europe has a long history of leading the way. We were the first to issue green bonds in 2007, and they continue to go from strength to strength. Almost 135 billion euro worth was issued around the world in 2017 alone. This shows that both policymakers and the financial sector itself are already embracing the opportunities that come with the green transition. But others in the world are catching up. China accounted for 40% of green bonds in 2016, overtaking the European Investment Bank in the process. This is why I want Europe to be the global hub for sustainable investment. With the US regrettably pulling out from the Paris Agreement, but we have to nuance what I'm just saying now by what Michael told us during his excellent speech. With the United States, Washington, let's say, pulling out from the Paris Agreement, the EU has now an opportunity to be the destination of choice for low-carbon technologies and sustainable investments. Europe is open for sustainable business, but climate change knows no boundaries and will affect us all. We cannot work alone. This is why we want to lead international efforts and will work with our G7, G20 and United Nations partners to set global sustainable finance standards. Even 2 decades ago, sustainability was a specialist topic for experts and scientists. Today, it's a daily reality and a priority for governments, for financial institutions, for business, for citizens. It is driving the European agenda, as we will see over the next 2 days, when European leaders will discuss the European Energy Union as well as the European Capital Markets Union. The message I will be bringing to the European Council table is that we have no time to lose in completing both unions. We must move from proposals to legislation and from legislation to implementation. And I will be repeating the message of today's conference. The green transition will not happen without the financial sector. At its heart, it's about making sure that our money works for our planet as well as our bottom line. There is no greater return on investment. Thank you for listening, and thank you to my assistant. Thank you.
Tout le plaisir était pour moi, Monsieur le Président.
The pleasure was all mine, President.
Continue with a panel that I will have the pleasure to moderate. President Juncker, Mr. Bloomberg will lead.